The digital art era is here. AI and art creation tools empower anyone to make it. Blockchain technologies allow anyone to own it. VR, AR, and extended reality immerse us in it. Let's talk to artists and innovators behind the visual magic. I'm your host, Roger Dickerman. Welcome to the future of art. Today, we welcome Artie Handz and Frank Manzano. Artie is a longtime collector in the digital art space. He is the founder of Artie Galerie, and he is a strong artist advocate. Frank brings a film and photography background into his career as an artist, emphasizing AI-assisted video. Artie describes Frank's work as a funhouse mirror merger of a viewer's own memories and the unfamiliar. This interview takes place as the pair are preparing for Artie Galerie's inaugural Verse exhibition. We delve not only into the exhibition itself, but also how it came together, how it's structured, and how it iterated into what is now ready for showtime. Let's get to it. Artie Handz, Frank Manzano, welcome to the future of art.
How are you?
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
This is the very rare two-guest episode. Have only done one of these in the short lifespan. This will be the 25th episode of the future of art. There's been only one other episode with two guests on it, so I'm thrilled to have you both here at the same time.
Thrilled as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Glad it's a package deal.
Package deal.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Let's get into it. I think this is going to be a wonderful conversation. And the one thing I want to make clear to anyone who's listening to this, if you happen to listen to the last episode, which was with Rope Reynisto, you may remember the name Frank Manzano coming up within that episode. And it was a lot of glowing things that were said. Obviously, you are an artist, Frank, that was top of Rope's mind. And I think that's going to be fun to get into. Now we get to jump right into an episode that was completely unplanned. Didn't plan that bridge, but I think it is quite a nice bridge for those who have been following along.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So let's start with the only pre-canned question that you're going to get today is the question that we use to start off each episode. And Frank, why don't we go with that theme? I'll field it to you first, and Artie, you're going to get a little more time to think. But the question is, what does art mean to you?
What does art mean? It's a language and a tool that it could kind of it assists you with digging around for something that you might not even know what you're looking for, but you could use this tool like kind of to explore within yourself. And again, it doesn't necessarily you might not ever find anything, but it's exhilarating to use it. I would say, it's its own language. It's its own kind of thing. It doesn't. It's very hard to. It's kind of it's difficult in a way to define. But I think for me, what it does is it's a way to kind of get to places, I think, in myself that I maybe wouldn't necessarily be able to get into through just the mundane parts of life. I think it's kind of an escape from all that, and it reveals something. Possibly, that's the goal, kind of. Yeah. I'm
not supposed to bias these answers at all, but what I was thinking about, and I hope this comes through, is in a very positive way and a non-cheesy way, was a metal detector for the spirit.
Yes.
When you were talking about that.
Yeah. I yes, for sure. That's definitely, yeah. Only, it's kind of like if you had a metal detector and you were, maybe looking somewhere where you have no idea what, there may not be anything there but lint or rocks. But yeah, it's definitely like something to kind of guide with you. Yeah.
Artie Handz, what about you?
Yeah, no, I liked Frank's definition. Art, I think, is impossible to define. It's similar to there's an old story, or it's not a story, but the old when the Supreme Court was defining pornography, they just said, it when you see it, right? Like that's pornography, that's art. You can't necessarily describe where that line is, but everyone knows it, right? So it's hard to describe for me as a collector. I can't really create art. I don't AI is helping a little bit these days, but art is a medium of an expression. And for me, I'm a little bit on the spectrum, and I have a really tough time understanding my own emotions sometimes, and trying to place them. And what I've found by collecting art is I I'm able to process some of those emotions that I felt and able to connect with them based on some other person's expression of those similar or same emotions. So for me, it's a way of art is a way of figuring out myself better.
The
Yeah.
the common bond between those two responses I find pretty fascinating, where I think both of you approached it from a tools standpoint, right? Something like functionally that it can do, but also with plenty of emotional depth, right? Something that is undefinable or spiritual in nature. I think, I don't know, I guess that's one of the things I like about art is it is sometimes a very beautiful and confusing juxtaposition of things.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now that the stage is set and I've given you the most impossible to answer question in the world, let's get into some tangibles. I would love to maybe giving some perspective on each of your histories, and then of course with the end goal of how did you collide? Why are we all here together today? And this time I'll flip it. And Artie, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, brief history of my Web3 journey. A good friend of mine from I went to USC for undergrad. He messaged me. It was like the day after Christmas 2020, and he said, "Do you know what Top Shot is?" And I said, "No, let me find out." And then he just said, "Digital basketball cards." And I'd gotten an MBA in 2017 and 2018, and had one of my classes was called the Future of Banking, and it was finance class and all this stuff. But we were talking about the future of banking, and we had to write a small paper. It was not like anything big, 3 or 4 pages, but I wrote about like digital assets and how I think everything will be all assets will be digitized in some manner. And I had no idea that this was happening already happening on the blockchain and Ethereum. I had no clue, but it just made sense to me as the next frontier. And then when my friend said this is happening, I said, "Oh man, okay, I got to go check this out." And then a few weeks later, after you finally sort out how to send money and get a wallet and all those technical hurdles, I rode that Top Shot run up, made some money, and then took me another month and a half to figure out an Ethereum wallet. And then that rabbit hole just kept getting deeper and longer, and here I am. But yeah, I think it's been it's almost 3 years now. I think my first NFT was like January 29th. So it's the first year was just learning. The second year is kind of figuring out who you are and building a collection to reflect yourself. And this third year has been, all right, now what else can you do on top of collecting? And there's certain things everyone's good at, and you're trying to find the value that you can add to the community. And I always felt that, you know, my eye for art, my eye for things in general has always been something I'm proud of, and people tend to gravitate to me to question, hey, what's the best restaurant here? What's the, give me this. What type of music are you listening to? Because I know you have good taste, that type of thing. So I I found my value here in terms of just trying to be the grease in the system, trying to retweet things, trying to get artwork in front of the right people. And as that realization came along, Jamie from the Verse CEO reached out to me in October, early October, late September, and asked if I wanted to curate for them. And I immediately said, "Hell yes, that sounds awesome!" Versus such a killer platform. But I didn't really want to be like an employee, and I didn't really know how to fit. But then he said they're doing this kind of curated gallery system on their page, and I could join that. So I had to spin up my own gallery to to get onto the Verse platform. But it's been a really incredible experience. And I think it was middle October-ish or so. I was trying to think, okay, what do I do? And I wanted to do a single artist show first because less logistical challenges, etc. And I'd spent the previous 6 months collecting a lot of AI art. I'll collect anywhere, but AI has been kind of just a special interest to me recently. So I kind of was leaning that direction, but I every time I wrote down a list of kind of 10 or 15 artists I thought of, every time it was Frank was at the top of the list, and I just kept every time I kept thinking of someone else. I was like, no, I think Frank's the one to go with, and so I had a couple beers one night and wrote a long DM introducing myself. And I think we had chatted before a little bit because I'd collected a few of his
Yeah.
works, but just kind of saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is the first time for me. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you want to go on this journey with me? And he said yes with like a big smile, and it's been a wonderful experience. So um, huge thank you to Frank,
Oh, thank you
and
for,
for making it so easy, not easy, but like we just riff the whole time. It's all been good conversations and fun, and like it's never felt like work to me. So it's been really great.
yeah, same here. It definitely doesn't feel like work. Feels, yeah.
Frank, rewrite that history from your perspective. So take us back in your own world, right? How you entered, your background, and then bring us up to speed to that collision point with Artie.
So I have a background. I had always been making art my whole life. About 4 years ago, I had started working with. I picked up Procreate actually as something to work out ideas for painting, like traditional painting. Just something for, almost like a note-taking device. And I found something there was a potential language in digital art that I kind of wanted to explore more. And it got to the point where I was working more digitally than I was doing traditional work. Started using Blender and just kind of really playing around with it quite often. And I started getting into putting together animations, these short animations. Um, the animation process is fairly labor intensive, and you spend a lot of time and you get, 10 seconds worth of usable, material. And I had always been looking for ways to kind of streamline that. And um, that's how I initially started investigating AI about maybe year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and ended up discovering something else. And was a whole other path that it kind of took me down. And I had studied film when I was in college, and I never quite. I mean, I was always photography was always something that I did, but I never really got not the chance to really do anything with the film part. And I felt that this kind of took me closer into that direction. Um, and I just was putting stuff out on primarily Instagram. Alex from Fellowship, he had reached out to me, um, and he wanted to put my work into the post photography. Uh, the work went in there, um, and then Artie was one of he bought some of the work, and I we had like a little DM'd each other around that time, and we briefly kept in contact just here and there. We'd kind of chime in, and then he proposed the gallery idea to me, and I said, sure, let's yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that's and from there, it's been I think him and I are alike in a lot of ways because he's I think both of us are pretty agreeable people, uh, and he was really kind of doing his part, and my part was just to produce the work. And he kind of put everything else in place, and yeah, it just kind of came together. Yeah, so
Yeah,
That's that.
let's dig more into that of how this does come together, because I always find that to be fascinating. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a number of different artist collaborations myself, and it's a process that, in reflecting on that, never happens the same exact way twice. It can rhyme, right? But I'm curious as to how exactly this one went down. So Artie, when you have that conversation with Verse, you're excited about it, you figure out exactly the right path between you and Verse, how you'd proceed with that process. You reach out to Frank, you both are excited about this. What are you thinking structurally, right? What are you thinking structurally versus Frank's creative freedom, and how does that merger happen?
Yeah, I think it was mostly, as a literal first time gallerist, I was very upfront with Frank of being like, I don't know what the hell we're doing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's throw some spaghetti at the wall and see what happens, and just keep evaluating the spaghetti before it falls off. So I think we kind of chatted over kind of number of pieces and his time, and Verse was doing a bunch of end of year stuff, so we were trying to figure out the correct timing, and we thought, let's start the year off fresh. That'll give us a little more extra time to figure this out. And it was a lot of just back and forth, and then just kind of not ideating, but as he was kind of making a few pieces, being like, what what direction do you want to go, and how can I support you with that? I was just telling this story earlier, but you're a football guy. You know the term "let Russ cook." And I was just letting Frank cook. It was, once we figured out, okay, it can be 30 pieces, 2 minutes or so a piece. I was just like, I know what you're doing, and what you're doing is exactly what I want. Like, I just knew that we were on the same wavelength, and that I didn't need to intervene in any way. And also, like, who would I be to intervene? I'm the first time doing this. If he had asked me for, what do you think about this piece, or what do you think about this direction, I would have been happy to give my perspective. But he seemed so adamant's not the right word, but just sure of what he was doing, that I was, hands off in terms of the actual creation process, and let me start working on everything else.
Frank, how about your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, that was the. I mean, I think that's probably important for any artist, is that you don't have anybody kind of monitoring the work, I'm a pretty hands-off person too, like with my own work, even like I feel like when you're done working on something, or like after I've completed, like I have no problem with somebody deciding that, if he would have decided that he wanted to name all the pieces, that's fine. If he decided that, we're not going to change anything visually, but if he decides that he wants some type of different, a certain person to do sound for them, I'm really open to. I just, once it kind of leaves once I send it out, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's really, it's not mine now. It's kind of, and he already kind of has that. I think that same kind of, he just kind of let things kind of evolve. Just, he's pushing in one direction, I'm pushing in one direction, we're heading in the right place. And he mentions that, he said he doesn't know, I don't, and I think I don't know what I'm doing either. And I think it's a good thing to not really, I try not to really think about, at least I try not to think about what I'm doing. I find that when I try to think about what I'm doing, or plan on doing something, nothing will really come out of it. I can't work that way. Some people can, but for me, it's, I need to just have kind of very, very small rules I set for myself. So in this case, it was just 30 pieces, and it was just open from there. I can kind of just move in the direction I need to move.
You mentioned 30 pieces, and that gets at the next question I was going to pose. The number, right? When you are approaching a verse, and you have together creative freedom over not just the art itself, but the structure, right? And the presentation, and how that goes out to collectors on the other side. How are you thinking that through? How do you arrive at 30 pieces?
I think that was something that that was I think Artie came up with that number more just because it didn't want to make the collection super big, but just something that somebody can kind of go in and see what what's going on there, what I'm working on, and it's I think and I think that's a good number too, just because I feel that like every I would say every 30, 40 pieces, you have some type of, not a large breakthrough, but you have something that comes through. And I had just finished kind of a collection before this. And for me, like if I'm done with an idea, I'm kind of like done with it. I'll revisit it maybe months, years later, but once I've kind of things become stale really quick for me, and then I no longer want to play with that idea. So the idea of starting 30 new pieces with really not much in mind other than, you know, it was it was a good number. And I think and like I already had mentioned, like I think in towards they're all, I mean, I think towards the end is when it starts to become very cohesive. Like the last 10 pieces of every collection, I always feel like are always, everything that you're trying to work through in the beginning starts to work itself through by 30, at least for me, you know what I mean? And then, obviously you continue working after the collection, but I think every 30 or 40 pieces, there's always some little kind of thing that you work through.
Artie, why 30?
Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Frank. I cut you
oh,
off.
no, go ahead. I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 30s, there are several different factors. Some of it's technical factors. We discussed doing some like really, really long form videos, like, like 30-minute long videos, but then you end up having problems with the blockchain and IFPS and et cetera. So or even Twitter, right? Like I posted all 30 videos today, which you can find now. But posting on the videos, you have to, Twitter only allows 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And I found out that a couple of them were 2:20:05 or 2:20.5, and I had to slightly edit the very end to post them on Twitter. But yeah, it's oftentimes there's just technical limits too, right? So we were limited technically in terms of kind of some ideas we had. But ultimately, I think 30 was kind of a good manageable number where you're allowed to dig deep and get like series that really go somewhere, um, without being overloaded. Because despite some people's opinions, scarcity still matters. And Frank has a decent amount of work on the dailies, so I didn't want to do 80 pieces, but at the same time, 10 pieces, you 10 pieces also would have been nice. I don't think it would have been gotten as deep as we would have liked into the material, but it also, you're learning to be on the other side of the collector, and I'm like, hey, I make a percentage of how much this sells, so we need to have some more pieces than 10,
Yeah.
right? So there's a actual financial aspect you kind of have to consider as well when you're on this side of things. So 30 just seemed like a good number. That's a month's worth of art, one for every day type of deal. And I think it's just a really fantastic collection that came out of it.
You mentioned the length, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Curious to throw this question on the table. How do you see the relationship between, let's say, artist and collector, in this case, artist and curator, right, and collector, when it comes to still short form video, long form video, and then Artie, you even mentioned something as long as, let's say, 30 minutes. Let's say there was no technical limitation, something that gets more into a short film, like a true film type category. How do you guys think through that relationship and talk about it from either your preferences or what you feel a collector's preference might be?
Well, you know, it was Frank's idea to go with these super long ones, and I'm actually like super interested. Like, I think in a world without any limitations, I think that'd be super super cool. Um, However, when you are working with you know other collectors that you don't necessarily share the same viewpoints as you. You're trying to find, you know, where your circles cross, right? And I think that that 2 minute 20 is, you know, that's the Twitter limit, but around that 2 minute mark is especially with work like Frank's, that's so frenetic. Is kind of the limit of most people's, uh, you know, what they can handle, right? Their attention span slash processing ability. These pieces are so deep and there's so much going on. You know, I've as the curator, I have watched all of them back to back to back before, and that's a tough hour. um, but yeah, I think it's just trying to trying to make it work, you know.
Yeah, time is I think even the way, even like with the current state of the tools, you can't, in order to keep somebody engaged for like a longer period than I would say 5 minutes, 4 minutes, there would have to be some type of narrative. There would have to be something that's keeping, um, I don't want to say an anticipation, but just something that's driving somebody to follow it along. If you're telling a story that's not a nonlinear narrative, and you're using visuals to tell it, there's no dialogue. Um, you don't really. I don't think you have that much time. You have to kind of keep it to where, um, it just kind of it it picks up, it kind of goes somewhere, and then it kind of just tapers off. I think right now, at least, I find that if I when we were talking about the longer pieces, I was, because I had been thinking about doing longer pieces, and that would require a narrative structure. The problem for me right with that is and I've tried piecing it together, and I work on it on the side, but um, when you're coming up with something a little bit more linear, you don't. I feel that right now I have to sacrifice too much visually, and um, right now at this point, that really doesn't inspire me too much, because it's not something that's engaging me. So that's why I don't know if I'm ready to do something in that range yet. I think if I'm able to kind of uh, merge that, if I'm able to put that together, then I would be interested. But right now, I think, and again too, like I think most people don't have. That's a lot to require of somebody. 10 minutes of their time. I mean, people want to like look through Twitter, and sometimes I think I'm pushing it with 2 minutes. So I think 10 minutes is kind of like, that's sick. It's a little bit more time, and I don't know if people that are just scrolling on their phone or looking, even if they're looking at art, have that kind of want to spend that much time doing that. So yeah,
What I think's really what you said about the like extra time and requiring a narrative plot. I think that'd be almost, you know, almost kind of against the way that you tend to work, right? It's sort of a
yeah,
here's this, and we're building and building from the bottom up instead of this narrative structure that comes from the top, and then
yeah,
trying to build around that narrative structure, right? So I think it'd be a kind of not a different skill set, but a whole different process for you to be able
very
to do that.
different, very different. And the thing too is like, you could play around with narrative structure, but you need more than 10 minutes to do that. So you really can't do anything that, you know, again, I can't. I should clarify that. At this point, I am unable to do that at this point, or at least not. I haven't tried that at this point yet, or I haven't been able to really put that together. I'm sure somebody could definitely figure that out, but it's just, yeah, I think, I think, I think, although lately my pieces have been longer, I've been able to get in the 3 minute zone, 3:25 sometimes. And I think with the trick with that is like, I've noticed that you could have a piece could be 30 seconds and feel long. It really just has to do with the movement. I used to think it had to do with the amount of clips, but it really has to do with the movement within the clips more so than, at least with silent or something that doesn't have dialogue. It's not so much the amount of clips as much as it is the what's going on in those clips. So you can make a minute seem really long just based on what's in the clips, kind of.
I don't want to take RD's job away from me here, but just a question because it popped up. What made you change the narrative pace, or not narrative pace, but the pace of the clips a little bit? Because in the previous work it had been really, really frenetic. Now it's just pretty frenetic. I know you added the music in to kind of add that freneticism, but why did you kind of scale back the speed between the frames and stuff?
You mean slow it down? Or
Yeah, well, like, like, I'd say previously it'd be like 1 second cut, 1 second cut, like on the previous works on most of the dailies, where this has felt more of like three, it's more cut, cut, versus the other ones were like cut, 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 cut.
yeah, well, I wanted to start to, and it's been something that I want to do all along. I wanted to kind of take like an element from like filmmaking, which is like the mise en scène, like everything in the scene, kind of. I wanted to make it where you can kind of almost like a photograph. A photograph is something you're able to look at, you're able to examine everything in the photograph. And the idea was that each clip can stand alone. In each, a still of a clip can stand alone. And it was, instead of having, just like this kind of movement driving it, there is movement, but it's kind of contained within each segment. So that's kind of what kind of drove that decision. Whereas just I wanted to start to do things where I had this period before I was doing this collection. I was working. I did like about 15 pieces that were just prompt based, and after looking at them, I wanted to start to slow things down. I wanted to start to just kind of find it. I felt that was going to be, there was just limits to moving that fast. And it definitely, I think the most important thing I think is just what's in the actual, that particular clip, that scene, if you want to call it that frame. It's everything that's in that kind of will let you go to the next piece, I guess, the next frame and see something else, kind of. Yeah.
Artie, if someone was asking you for a 30-second pitch, not even a pitch, a description of Frank's art, right? Going back to what does art mean to you? Maybe talking about what does Frank's art mean to you? How would you describe that to somebody else?
Oh man, it's frenetic, compelling, unsettling, post photographic video. Man, I wrote. This is why I wrote a statement on this, because it's smarter when you think about it and write it out. But I said something that he has this sort of this like nostalgic anxiety in his art. You're
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you're watching this thing, and it's unfamiliar because it's ugly, and like you're like, is this a People of Walmart book? But it's also like incredibly familiar, and it's man, it's hard to like place it down. When I wrote the exhibition statement, it took me like, for 5 paragraphs, it took me like a week, because it's hard to nail down. But I think that's also the point, that it's open to interpretation, that it's not to be nailed down. But I think it's a hard look at a hapless time on Earth. Yet, we've talked about this with some other people before. Yet there's still like hope in the work. It's not it's not this like hopeless take. It's like, hey, look at this now, because there's a problem, but let's look at this now.
Nostalgic anxiety is a winning phrase because I've mentioned to you I've spent a bunch of time with Frank your work recently, very recently, almost on a pseudo daily basis, especially with the collection that you had over at Daily. That phrase absolutely fits my experience over the past several weeks. So, Frank, I'd love for you to add your context.
Well, the nostalgia part, I thought it was interesting that he had picked that up because the seed of everything is really that I work on is always it all starts with like memory. Like when I'm working, like it's always like memories of stuff from childhood or um it's really memories that kind of drive everything. And it's what resonates with me when I'm going through like when I'm generating, a lot of images come up, and the direction I go is the direction of what resonates based on kind of, you know, these memories essentially. And for me, it was kind of the personal part of the work that there wasn't this. A lot of my prompts are they're really just kind of a lot of times statements or things that are from, you know, I'm not really prompting in the sense of like I'm laying out a scene. It's more of I'm taking an image and I'm putting it together with an idea and I'm kind of tweaking it around to see what comes out of it. But it really it always comes down to that for me, that sense of nostalgia. And it wasn't something that I really discussed ever, but you know, I think the fact that he picked that up, like, and you've picked it up, and other people have mentioned the same thing, that they get, you know, this kind of nostalgia, that, I mean, that kind of, I guess, resonates with me just because, it, it lets me know that whatever language it is that I'm trying to articulate is being understood. I find that, in this, with social media, especially even prior to the AI work, the one thing about posting work is that a lot of times, like I don't, I try not to think about the work in that sense. Like, in, you know, it seems like there's, you know, these kind of hard themes to the work, but it's really, I think the work is more, for me, it's definitely more personal than it is, than any type of, you know, message that I'm trying to get across. And a lot of times I don't know what I'm thinking or feeling maybe. And, you know, I've people from other countries will, you know, DM me, and, you know, I have to use the translator to see what they're saying, and they'll hit it spot on. Like that, oh yeah, that's what I was like. They define the work in some sense, I think, better than I do. You know what I mean? Like if I have to define it or I have to make meaning out of it, it's kind of difficult because for me, there's much more something personal in it. Whereas I feel that other people, when they look at it, they have a better grasp of it. Even they, you know, they're spotting the emotions better. And yeah, I mean, they really help kind of make meaning out of it for me, I think. And that's kind of why I'm really kind of hands off with it, because I like, that's one of the things that I enjoy, is like seeing what people kind of, what they pull out of it, you know. And yeah, that's kind of the fun part.
Frank, with that level of personal connection that you obviously, I mean, most artists have that to an extent, but just hearing you verbalize that just now, what does ownership mean to you on the other side? When you do, you've mentioned when you create a work, you're done with it. You sort of, you view it as now being in maybe somebody else's hands, but that ownership bond where one person for one of these 30 is stepping into it and saying, I connected with that and I would now like to quote unquote own that artwork.
Yeah, yeah, I think at that point they have more ownership of it than I ever had, in a way, because um, I only had it for, I mean, I really only have it while I'm in it. Once it's kind of done, it's done and it's out. And then like someone else is taking it and they're actually, they're it's there. It's permanent. It's something that came outside, and so I think that in that sense, I think it's theirs. I mean, when you own a piece of, that's anybody, when you buy art or you have a piece of art, it's not the artist anymore. I mean, it's not their piece. They don't, I mean, I guess if we're talking business, that's a whole other thing. I mean, but just speaking like, in terms of like, I guess the meaning of the work, I don't think that, once it leaves you, it's everyone else's then, and it's who's ever examining it. But if somebody buys it, it's theirs. I mean, that's their piece now. They're kind of holding it. So that's why I think
Artie,
it's also. Go on.
go.
Sorry.
You go, Frank. Finish your
Oh,
thought.
I also think it's important. That's why it's important, I think, for the right people to buy the work too. You know what I mean? Somebody that really is, you know, uh, buying the work because it resonates with them, and not just because, not that their people are buying the work I'm making to get rich necessarily, but that's not. But I'm just saying it's nice to know that people are buying the work because it resonates with them and it means something in that regard.
Artie, take it back prior to what you're doing together. You collected Frank's work. So talk about that from your perspective, what that ownership bond means to you as a collector of Frank's.
Yeah, I mean, we use the word ownership, but it's really stewardship, right? Like it's Frank's, I get to be the steward of Frank's game worn jersey, like I'm just holding it until someone in Frank's case, far future, recognizes it for what it is. There is obviously like that commercial aspect, but to me, the heart of ownership is connecting with the artist and believing in the statement and believing in the expressionism and connecting over it and saying, here, I have money. I'm going to give you this money so I can put this in my house or in my digital wallet. And I would like you to take that money and keep making more art and keep spreading your vision to the world. I think in times like these in the world when there's so much dramas like the world, I mean, just hecticness, just evil, fucked up shit, that there's so much beauty and like emotional content and connection through what we're doing here. And you know, I always think about like what is the end game of NFT, and I think it's you see it. I mean, you do to take my story of 3 years. Like yes, I've collected art before, but I only have so many walls. There's limitations. All this is a new. I think in 10, 15, 20 years, I think everybody is going to collect art in the same way you collect or used to collect CDs, right? You it's I think collecting is in the human nature. Expressing who you are is in the human nature. The the terminology wallet made so much sense to me initially, and like the Capital One commercials. What's in your wallet? That actually does define you. I had a high school English teacher who one day she said, "Everybody, get out your wallet or purse or whatever, and whoever's bold enough to do it, put it out on the ground, and we're going to go through the wallet, and then without saying who it is, take out the IDs without saying who it is. Who is this person?" And we would take it out and be like, "Okay, this person has a gym card and a this and a that," and we could piece together who that person was based on what was in their wallet. And so that's the same thing here. If you go through and look at everyone's wallet, that it tells you a lot about who they are. And I want to be someone who supported a transformational art movement. And am I going to be a main character in the book? No, but like, a footnote's good enough for me. So,
Yeah, definitely. That's footnote is good, I think, for everything. Yeah, that's definitely yeah, just kind of just just having a a print, you know what I mean? A mark kind of is I think the most you can ask for with it, you know? Um, I, I don't know. It's the space right now. I think a lot of people that are coming in the space are making meaningful work, and I'm I'm hoping that there is critique of the work that becomes more. I don't mind criticism of the work. I think that there should be, you know, when you go to like if you're looking at paintings, for example, and you're looking at you know, you're going to look at an abstract painting, you're not going to use the same, you're not going to evaluate it and examine it the same way you would a piece of figurative work. It's a different language, and you're looking at it from a different perspective, context. And right now, with like the the work that's being made, like the AI work, the only discussion being had is like if it's art or not, or if you know there's not really any real critical discussion on it. And I think that's necessary for, you know, the work to take on more meaning. And I don't know. I think it's important that the work is more than just like some, you know, it's just like a gimmick of some sort, like something that is temporary that somebody could do um, right now at this period in time because of the technology available. Um, and I think because it is made with technology and the technology is evolving, that will that plays a factor in the aesthetic of the work. But I still think that um, people can make work now that will be timeless and will stand on its own even after the technology develops. And because, you know, if people are making work that means something to them, and if the right people are collecting the work, I think that's how it kind of can come to evolve a bit more, or at least to start to get again, I don't think criticism of the work would be bad. It would at least start, because you have a lot of people in this space right now, um, and there are different styles emerging, and there are people working different ways, and it's still all lumped together as just AI art. You know what I mean? It's not kind of looked at as, okay, well, this is one style of AI art. It's just AI art. Might not be art though. It might be just like a pet rock of some sort. You know what I mean? Um, so I mean, yeah, I think speaking when you said the word footnote, it just kind of made me think about, everybody's definitely everybody in this space right now is leaving a print, a small print in something that is evolving. There's a language that's evolving, and I think everyone is kind of contributing to this. Almost like it's a language that hasn't really been defined yet, but I think it's the people that are involved now are kind of contributing to that.
I think part of the reason it hasn't evolved past that, is this art or not, is because there's still such a rudimentary understanding of the tooling and the creative process. And we're also seeing these incredibly universal and accessible tools start to produce better outputs of again, of basic kinds, right? So Frank, if I'm going to give you a layup, but I would love for you, because I'm sure you'll say something that I don't even know. But the question is, Frank, why can't I click a button and make your art?
Well, I mean, anybody can, in a sense, prompt. I mean, anybody can make. I think it comes down. I mean, everyone's essentially, there's input, and then there's the output, right? But I think and I think not just with AI art, but all art comes down more. I mean, it really comes down to decisions that you make, choices that you make to do certain things, problems that you see, or problems that you kind of come up with, and how you like solve those problems. I guess that's kind of what makes a person's art their art. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is.
Take any one of the 30 artworks in this collection and talk about, because I actually think this is really informative for people wrapping their minds around creative process and what makes art and where does AI fall into the discussion. But if you could go any one of the 30 pieces that happens to come to mind, can you actually give an example of, let's say, a problem you faced in the creative process and a decision point and sort of how you evaluated that?
So when I say problem, at least for me, it's not so much a problem of, it's not so much the tool that's the problem or a technique, because I've never really been someone that, like, I don't look at art from the perspective of like, okay, you know, how well somebody can paint or draw. It's more of a problem of, it really has to do what, it's really a personal thing for that artist, something that's deeper than that, like something that they're thinking about, like they're associating some type of idea and emotion with some aesthetic or some type of language. And it's not a problem to me in a sense of like, well, this is broke, it has to be fixed. It's a much more like ambiguous problem of like, well, we all have things in ourselves that we are working on or working out or avoiding or paying too much attention to. And then there's our life experience, and all that together is, what should we choose? Do we choose to go in this direction or that direction? Do we choose this color or that? And I think that's the problem itself. It's not so much a problem of, you know, I mean, the problem is that there isn't anything there, and you're going to put something there. That's the first problem. And then the second problem is, okay, well, what's my next move here? What am I going to put here? What's going to be that? Those are essentially the problems, right? But they're very ambiguous. They're not. It's nothing that you could like put your hand on. Is like, okay, this is the problem, and we need to. You know, it's not that type of like. It's more, like I said, it's more of a personal thing, I think, and I think, like with a collection, you're approaching a collection, I think, from the idea of you have these kind of some ideas in your head. And I think, and this is again, just speaking for myself, if I have like an idea that I thought about a lot, I can never access that idea in my current state. Like I can't that day address that idea. I have to kind of work on whatever's on my plate. And then maybe 9 months down the line, those ideas that you've just kind of put behind, they automatically will start to manifest. If you've been continually working on just whatever's on your plate, at some point, all those old ideas will start to manifest themselves without you trying. They just kind of come out. You just kind of store them. And when I say ideas, it's not so much of a aesthetic ideas, much more like conceptual ideas. They kind of will work their way out on their own. And I think the thing about a collection is you're kind of, you're honing in on like, on that part of it, on that part of the process of when you're actually, you're hoping, and in this case, it kind of came through that you get to that point in the collection while you're working on it, that the idea starts to emerge. That's what I think what a collection is kind of. I mean, you're working every day, but you're kind of setting this time aside to kind of just, it's part of this collection. You don't know how the pieces are going to fit together, but you know that there's like something that you're working towards, and hopefully it will come together. That's kind of the best you could do, I think. And yeah, I'm getting off on a tangent here. What was your question?
It's a good tangent. Let's just keep riding with it. That's the beauty of these kinds of conversations. Artie, take that. I'm going to pose a question to follow up on that because we talked a lot about Frank ended that thought process talking about a collection, right? Let's continue to go with that. I want to take you guys into the future, and you're starting this. It's a very interesting time and place. I mean, Frank, you mentioned sort of the newness of AI in general, and a lot of the creative process around it. Artie, this is a new experience for you relative verse. You threw spaghetti at the wall. You've seen what's stuck, and now you're ready to move forward with this 30-piece collection. The year is 2030. I mean, take it to any random year in the future. You know what I'm getting at. How would you like this collection and your first endeavor on verse and Frank's 30 pieces to be remembered?
Oh man, I mean I have thought about this a little bit, but not in any deep manner. So I'm trying to quickly rack my brain. I mean, I think that's that's what's some of the wonderful thing about blockchain is in terms of record keeping. Here it is, and this was a place and time, and you can know exactly when it was minted, and there's so much metadata and data associated, so you can contextualize it. Looking backwards and everything. I think, I hope that for me personally that it's the beginning of something, not just a fart in the wind, right? Like something that's a structural beginning of the Artie Handz Gallery, right? So there's that. Like I hope that the momentum created by this is something that you'll be able to see and feel in 10, 15, 20 years. From a pure, artistic collection standpoint, my only hope is that at least 30 people appreciate it at that point, like it's not forgotten or in a hidden folder or whatever. Like it doesn't, not saying it has to be the most top of mind collection ever. In 10 years, you're going to be like, what's the best post photographic collection? It's obviously scheduled programming by Frank Manzano. Like that's not the goal, but it's if I whatever the equivalent of calling or DMing someone in 20 years and being like, hey, how often do you look at your piece from scheduled programming? I hope that it's, I looked at it 3 weeks ago. Like that's what I hope.
You know what the gem of that all was for me? When you framed it as, I hope at least 30 people appreciate the work. I think that is an amazing framing because you could go from a one of one perspective, a one of 30 to 31 of ones. You can go to 1,000-piece collection or 10,000-piece collection. I think that's a beautiful framing because what that does is it ensures that one, there are appreciative homes, and everything after that is icing on the cake. But framing that as, that made me think when you dropped. So Artie, in all of that, you dropped a real gem. That's one I'm going to take away from this episode.
Yeah.
That's the model of throwing spaghetti at the wall. There's some brilliance in there, on occasion.
But seriously, I mean, made that for all of what we're coalescing on, the art experience from all angles, right? We've talked about it from the creative process and Frank, your side. We've talked about it, Artie, your appreciation of art, stepping from collector now into curator and gallery creator, right? And experience creator. And you can look at it from any other angle. But I think what we're all accomplishing together, the end product of that is ultimately art and collections and how it all comes together. I think that's something we can all wish for, right? Is that anything we put stewardship into, right, from any angle, is that there are, as the sands of time pass through, that there is that floor, to use floor in a much more productive way than it's usually used, that there is that floor for all of us to fall back on.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, that's really what it comes, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Artie, I think you just summed up the spirit of everything in one sentence.
Just trying to find good homes. Just trying to find good homes.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So guys, so now frame it up. I know this is this episode will ultimately be a fart in the wind. I do hope there are some appreciators of this episode for quite some time and this interview. But please, for the people who are listening in real time, and for those listening later, give us the provenance, give us the blockchain provenance. Please give us the collection titling. Again, we know it's 30 pieces, but just give us the specifics of this presentation on Verse.
Yeah, so the series is called Scheduled Programming, and the title, and along with all of the titles of all the pieces, or there are no spaces; they're all jammed together. Frank had kind of done that naming style, and I thought it was interesting from a AI, where you're kind of merging. Here's this piece, this reference piece, this reference piece, and then AI merges them together and creates the video, right? So I thought it was interesting, that kind of slamming the words together, kind of German style, or making new words out of just slamming words together. I like that as topically. So yeah, the title is the series is Scheduled Programming by Frank Manzano. His handle is at loved_ORLEER. It's very hard. You have to type it out entirely in Twitter, because it will not. Twitter search sucks when you have an underscore. But yeah, it's 30 amazing pieces, ranging, say, probably a minute and a half to 2 minutes 20 or so. The entire series will be on verse.works platform. They will be releasing January 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's 24-hour auctions, and because there are 30 piece individual auctions and there are 30 pieces, so we wanted to split them up. So we instead of trying to work on, if you have 3 or 4 different pieces you want, instead of trying to battle all of them at the same time at the ending time, we've staggered them. So there'll be 15 ending at 1 p.m. on the 12th, and then 15 ending at 2 p.m. on the 12th. Standard 5-minute extensions for bidding at the end. And yeah, I'm really excited. It's definitely been a experience that has changed my life. Like I'm really hoping to make an actual career out of doing this, and this is my first go at it. And I can't thank Frank and everyone who's been involved, including you, RD, enough. It's just been awesome. So yeah, January 11th, Verse. There'll be plenty of links. If you follow me, Punk7635, I will be posting about it incessantly for the next 10 days or so.
And I think one more thing that's interesting is both Artie and I are kind of we've both kind of taken a jump. I recently started working full-time as an artist, and so it's a new kind of we're both kind of at this kind of place in life where we're kind of making these kind of big jumps, kind of, and we just so happen to kind of line up, you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of an interesting part of this whole thing, is that it's his kind of first exhibition of sorts, and it's my first kind of go at this as full-time. So I think there's something to that, something.
We're a bit of a Thelma and Louise, we're jumping off the cliff, driving off the cliff together.
Yeah.
That's when the magic happens.
Yeah. There's a lot of ambiguity in it for both of us, I think, so yeah.
Well, very excited to see what comes out the other side. It's apropos, it's kicking off a brand new year. I think some people like the new year more than others, but I think in this case, it feels like it adds. You're kicking off a new year together, new endeavors, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm very appreciative of both your mindsets, and I'm biased, but I'll say I think there's quite a great year plus ahead of you guys.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And same to you. I reached out to you because I respect everything you do for the space, and been a big fan since the original Artifacts models. I've got 10 or 15 of those. So was when I was thinking of different shows that I'd want to get on to help promote Frank's work and help get his name out there to beyond. I think within the specific AI collector community, he's very well known, but then outside of that, it's kind of its own little thing. So I really wanted to get his name out there, and honestly, Artie, you're the first person I thought of because your podcast and everything in 24 Hours Art is just super class, and you bring such a like positive attitude towards everything. It's really refreshing. So thank you for having us.
Of course. And, thank you. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. The big thing I'll say about that is the way that I approach the show is I almost never take inbounds. It's almost always, and I'm not even saying that wasn't like a pure inbound. I mean, we talk sometimes, Artie, like we circulate around each other for years now, which is wild to think about and to say. But it almost is never about, hey, can I come on? It's usually about this organic passion of the moment. It makes sense for us to talk. That's the way I did NFT origin stories for years. It's the way that I'm proceeding with the future of art. It's like this desire to talk to somebody, and I think it's an honor to be able to finally do it. Right? I think, again, we've poked around each other on different Twitter Spaces and on Twitter and whatnot, but to be able to do it at this level and this depth, and then how fortuitous, Frank, that literally unplanned in the wild, Rope comes on the last episode and rolls the red carpet out for you. Whether you believe in fate or destiny, whether you're a complete logical mind or a magical mind or somewhere in between, I find that to be fun. And so, just grateful for the dialogue.
Yeah, and I'm surprised. I mean, I really admire Rope. So with the fact that he, he's always speaking high, it kind of took me back when you said that too. I'm like, whoa, because he's collected some of my work, and I met him in Paris, and it's been he's really it's his, certain people, their opinion means something. We like to say we don't care what anybody, no, but like some people, like, you really, you want them to admire your work, or and it means something when they do. So yeah, that's definitely something. Yeah, especially because I think I've always looked at his work like in the highest regard, just because, like I said, there was always a proficiency there, and there was like, it's like I always, when I first saw his work, I'm like, does he have access to models that no one knows about? You know what I mean? Like, does he have something like, maybe he's got like something up his sleeve, and how's he,
he's got the secret sauce.
Yeah. And then I kind of learned that he's like he's just plugging away. You know what I mean? He's just kind of following his kind of his vision.
Artie, Frank, put your stamp on the future of art. Who would you like to see come on the show? Similar to Rope's mention of you, Frank. Now you get to do the same thing. So you guys each mention a name. First person that comes to mind, not exclusionary, of course. There's a million people who, quote unquote, should be on, but follow your passion today. Who comes to mind?
Well, Joe Pease. Yeah.
You took mine, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're both. Yeah, I think he's one of your favorite artists as well. So yeah, I mean, that's, if we're talking digital artist. Definitely. I mean, I really haven't heard much from him, and there's not. In fact, I've never heard anything from him. I mean, as far as I know, he could be a bot.
Joe's a very, very nice Australian fellow living in Orange County. I know a little bit about him because I do own a Pease one of one. I'm going to say Joe also. We were asked this question earlier, so Frank stole my answer. I mean, his work speaks for itself. But yeah, he's a really nice guy. He's not super into like doing the media tour stuff. But he, I think if you caught him at the right time, you could potentially get him. He's really nice. He did a lot of like his history work in filming skateboarding stuff. My wife's cousin is a professional skateboarder, and so when I discovered his work, I reached out to him and asked him if he knew him, and they had been together on a couple trips, professional skateboarding trips in like China and some other places. So he knew him fairly well from that. So very small world, but yeah, Joe P is his. No one's doing what he's doing with video work.
No. And one of the things I like about his work too is that at a first glance, like if you were just exposed to it for the first time and you're just experiencing it, like you might not catch it at first. You might just kind of look at it and be like, oh, what is this? It just seems like something. It's not until you actually look at it that you realize, oh wait, what's going on here? And you'll start to see something emerge, and then it starts emerging all over the place, and you realize, wow, this whole thing is on some type of sequence here. And you can never put your finger on like what the sequence is. Kind of, that's the other thing I like about his work too. Is yeah, there's definitely like a movement to it that's it really draws you in,
Well, it's a double emphatic. I'll make it a triple. Joe Pease is someone I think we all have respect for. I remember being at Beeple Studios opening earlier in 2023. Now the calendar's changed, but earlier in 2023, and he was one of the artists who was displayed across the studio opening, and that was a very fun. Managed to capture a bunch of video of that and send it over to him, and yeah, that would be a wonderful interview to have. And his work is extremely thoughtful, and Artie. From the stewardship perspective, you're passing along some nice pangs of jealousy now.
Yeah, no, we'll make you more jealous. It was 6 East.
Yeah. All right. Oh, guys, I think that's about time we wrap this episode. Listen,
no Cowboys.
Oh. And cut.
We'll save that for the live next Thursday.
That's right. Yeah, we'll save that for a different dialogue. But listen, appreciate you both. Again, this is the beginning of the calendar year 2024. Both in a way embarking upon something with either pure newness or very close to the beginning of different phases in each of your lives. And I think that's special. I mean, even the future of art's only 25 episodes old. So glad you guys are here with me, and happy to do it again very soon. And then ideally in those future years, we are back talking about those well over 30 appreciators of this collection that's coming. So
yeah.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Artie.
Thank you.
We will talk soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and for being part of the future of art. If you liked the episode, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite platform, and onward to the many conversations that await us. The Future of Art is produced by Artifex. Artifex, Artifex, was created to honor today's top digital fine artists in 3 dimensions. Each artist's one-of-one work of art becomes a collectible 3D sculpture and centerpiece of an immersive world built in Unreal Engine, the creation tool of Epic Games. Search Artifex Viewer on Apple and download our brand new free app to experience the sculptures in augmented reality. And visit artifex.art/unreal to literally step inside the art on your browser.